Hello, I'm Ollie and this is Criminally, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, again, trash. This is my Garb August wrap-up. Now, I'm sure this won't be the last time I talk about trashy books on the channel, but I certainly won't be talking about them quite as much as I have been over the last couple of months. So, both during Garb August and the run-up to Garb August, I'm conscious that it's really dominated my channel, as you would probably expect it to, because A, it's something I'm quite passionate about, and B, it was a big event that I was really looking forward to. But it is now the 1st of September as I film this. The video will go up tomorrow on the 2nd, and Garb August is officially no more. It is over, certainly for this year. And I wanted to start by saying a huge thank you to everybody who's got involved in Garb August. So both my dirty baker's dozen of co-hosts who all did a fantastic job, to all the other booktubers who've got involved, who've read books for Garb August, who've made videos, who've discussed it, and to everyone else. So all the subscribers who've commented on my videos and the other host videos, who've read books themselves, who've expressed opinions. It's been an absolutely fantastic experience for me. I've really enjoyed it, and I think most of the people who've been involved have enjoyed it too. And I think looking back, it hasn't been something that everyone has enjoyed all of the time, and even I, who am something of a connoisseur of trash fiction, have not enjoyed every book I've read this month. And that, I guess, was really the point. The point of Garb August was to get people to read books that they wouldn't normally read, and just to see how that felt, and to think about how we categorise books as trash or as highbrow or as literature or whatever. To start thinking about that and to be critical about our own opinions as well as the opinions of other people, which isn't to say that we should be getting into arguments with people about it, but I think trashy fiction has a place in the lives of readers, which is sometimes overlooked, and I think we tend to talk a lot more about respectable books and Booker Prize winners and Pulitzer Prize winners and all that stuff, and it's right that we should, because those are often great books, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't talk about the lower if you like, the lower end of the literary spectrum, and I think there's been some really fantastic discussions this month about what is trash, what makes up trash, how do you identify trash, and what's the difference between good trash and bad trash. And that has been really heartwarming for me to see some of this stuff that doesn't tend to get talked about much getting discussed by a really wide variety of people on BookTube, both in videos and in the comments. So I've absolutely loved all of that. So again, I say thank you to everybody who's got involved. It's been an absolute joy for me. I was hoping to put together some sort of clever video, or some sort of enjoyable video, shall we say, for the end of it, like I did for the launch of Garb August, and unfortunately time has just got away from me and I haven't managed to do that. But I have already got ideas for Garb August 2023. So Garb August will return. Next year's Garb August will be Garb August 2. Well, actually, I'll leave it. I will announce the title of next year's Garb August at the end of this video. But yeah, so thank you to everybody. Sorry that I haven't got something a bit more interesting to show you for the final, or my final video of Garb August. But do check out everybody else's Garb August videos. So the vast majority of the co-hosts have done their kind of wrap-up videos. I'll link to all of the co-hosts in the notes for this video, so do check out their channels if you don't follow them already, and check out their thoughts, because as various of them have said in their wrap-up videos that I've been watching over the last couple of days, everybody's had a different take on Garb August. It's meant something slightly different for everybody, and I think everyone has come away from it with a slightly different understanding of what trash is, because it is a really difficult thing to pin down. So I had a few things. What I will do in a few minutes is go through all the books I read for Garb August, there are a lot. I'm not going to go into massive detail on each one because we would be here forever if I did. I'm deliberately filming this in my lunch break, so I have a time-boxed window that I can actually film in, so I don't go on too long. I may already have gone on too long, but we'll see. Anyway, I will come back to the books, but firstly I just wanted to talk a bit more about Garb August and what I feel like I've learned from it. So the first thing I learned is not everybody reads trash. That was, I don't know why that was a surprise to me, but it did feel like a bit of a surprise to me. I guess I kind of assumed that everybody had their guilty pleasure reads. And they may not have as many guilty pleasures as I do, but I kind of assumed that everybody did it, but turns out not to be the case. And many people, including some of the co-hosts, were, felt themselves to be completely new to trash. And I would say I did deliberately pick the co-host to be a mix of people who would have had, some or a lot of experience of trash already. So people like Steve Donoghue, Michael K. Vaughan, Gregor and other bibliophile reads. I knew that all of them, had read trash widely already. But also deliberately picked some people who I thought would have little or no experience of trash. So people like Shelley Swearingen, like Gina Stanya, like Elliis and the Giant Bookshelf. And that did prove to be, I think I was right in making that decision, because I think it's given us a really nice range of views on trash, and it's been really nice for me seeing people's kind of experience of trash grow and develop through the month as they've made videos. So the next question then is, did we successfully define trash? And as I've kind of already said, I don't think we did. And I also don't think we successfully defined the difference between good trash and bad trash. I think there definitely is good trash and bad trash, but did we manage to narrow that down? No, I don't think so. And those questions may well both be impossible to answer. We did go into the month with our kind of list that we, the co-hosts, had come up with in terms of like signifiers of trash, and we had the Garb August bingo card to help guide people as well. But I think we had, and this was true of my own reading as well as other people's. People read books that they assumed were going to be trash and that they would enjoy, and found either that they weren't trash at all, that they were actually something, probably not trash, or that they were trash but they were really bad trash and they DNF them, or that they were trash and they were wonderful trash and they really enjoyed reading it. So there's been a real variety of different books read out there. And I think the other thing we've learned, and again this is no surprise, is one person's trash is another person's treasure. So I'm thinking particularly of the book Flowers in the Attic, which I think, I haven't done a scientific analysis of this, but I think that is the most read book during Garb August. So I've seen a number of different people who've read it. So I'm trying to think who read it. So Alex at the Bookubus read it. I think Kelsey at Slime and Slashers read it. Alice read it. Jack from Spreadbrook Joy read it. Greg from Another Bibliophile Reads tried to read it and DNF'd it. So some people who read Flowers in the Attic absolutely loved it. I think it's a fantastic book. I read it a few years ago. But other people who tried to read it did not get on with it at all. And I think if you move on from there, so if you move on from that concept that one person's trash is another person's treasure, you get a bunch of other conclusions as well, many of which we knew going into it. But I think one is that trashy books don't have to be bad books. The other one is that trashy books can have challenging content. So I know a lot of people struggled with some of the books they read this month because they had, kind of racist or sexist content, and that is often true of older trashy books. And I've said this before in videos, everyone has their own kind of level of balance of how much crap they can take for the enjoyment that they're getting out of a book. And then I think the other one, which a few people mentioned in their videos, is that trash can be surprisingly boring. So a book that is not well written and is not engaging, even if it is packed to the gills with sex and violence, can be really quite boring. And certainly, there were a few people who DNF books for that. For that reason, the books were just dull, despite the content. But at its best, and I think a lot of people did find this with the trashy books they read, trash can be wonderfully entertaining and can be a brilliant palate cleanser between more difficult, more challenging books. I think for me, trash often reminds me why I enjoy reading. It gives me that kind of visceral thrill of a book that I can just fly through and enjoy every page of, that I don't get with more challenging works that you have to put a bit more attention into. So I think it's really important that we remember that even when trashy books are challenging and offensive even, at their heart they are supposed to be entertainment. And sometimes the lens of time can make things that were acceptable, rightly or wrongly, probably wrongly when the book was written, they can make those things feel offensive now, but hopefully the book will have enough entertainment value as well to override that for the reader. But it's also important to remember when going into books, any books, not just trash books, that you should be prepared to DNF them. And I was pleased to see that a lot of people in their kind of weekly wrap-up videos and things like that did say, I tried this, it just wasn't for me, I didn't get on with it, I DNF'd it and moved on to something. And that other thing that I moved on to, actually I had a really good time with. So we should always be prepared to DNF books, even when we've said in a TBR video that we're going to read them. And I had some DNFs for Garb August. What did I DNF? I DNF'd The Savages by Shirley Conran, which I was expecting to really enjoy. And there were a couple of books that I had on my TBR that when I got to them, I just wasn't in the mood for them. So I picked something else instead. I think the other thing we should definitely all learn, particularly if we're booktubers, but not just booktubers, is when preparing for an event, it is possible to buy too many books for it. So it came from the page, asked me the question in one of my Ask Grim and Ollie videos, how many books have you bought for Garb August? And I think the answer was around 130. Now I've read, and we'll talk in a minute, about 34 books that I read for Garb August. I also did, in the run-up to Garb August, I did 10 weeks where I talked about a book every week. So you could say I've read 44 books for Garb August, and there were a few that I bought deliberately to give away. So I gave away, I think it was 5 books in the end for Garb August as well. So that takes us up to 49. But clearly 49 is nowhere near 130, and I did buy far more books than I needed to for Garb August. And I know that some of the other hosts fell into that trap as well. But hey, at least we're well prepared for next year. Right, so that's my kind of rambly thoughts on Garb August. Do let me know in the comments what you got out of it if you took part in the event. Hopefully you found it interesting and enjoyable. Hopefully you thought that, we put up some interesting videos, around the topic of what trash is, but also about the books that we read. And on that note, I'm now going to go on to going through all the books I read for Garb August. Right, so I've got 34 books to go through, so I'm going to go through them at pace. 8 of them are Kindle books. So 26 physical books, and what I'm going to do, normally when I do these wrap-ups, I do them from worst book to best. This time, as it's Garb August, I thought I would do it from best book to worst. So without further ado, let's get on with it. So best book, Thor by Wayne Smith. So I've done a video review of this, an early 90s horror novel, told largely from the perspective of a dog. I absolutely loved it. I thought he nailed Thor as a character, fantastic lead character, really, really enjoyed it. Next up, so my second favourite book of the month, and this was a surprise for me, so Hitting the Brakes by Ken Casper, one of the NASCAR romances I bought. So I've done a video review of this as well. It was just perfectly crafted, a really, really enjoyable, entertaining romance. Next up, we have Fallen Hearts by V.C. Andrews, so the third book in the Castile saga. Again, I really, really enjoyed this. Just a really well done family saga type of book. I absolutely loved it. Next up, book 7 in the Survivalist series, The Prophet by Jerry Ahern. I've just finished this very recently. Hugely entertaining, just probably the most kind of full-on in terms of violence of the Survivalist book so far, but just pure page-turning fun. Next up, we have another Kindle one, so Satan's Burnouts Must Die, by David Sodergren. So I've just done a review of that one, which will go up soon. So this is an ultra-violent biker novel, but a huge amount of fun. I really enjoyed it. And then after that, a trashy pulp, also on Kindle, which is Shark Fighter by Nicolas Brady, aka Len Levinson. So a very enjoyable, very silly book about a man who is hired to fight 2 sharks in a swimming pool whilst being filmed for money. Next up, more Killer Animals, Death Tour by David J. Michael, a really quite enjoyable 80s horror novel about a group of students who go into the sewers hunting for an alligator and find more than they expected. Next up, a saucy western, so Lone Star and the Deadly Vixens, so about a female sheriff. I don't know, is she a sheriff? I think she's a sheriff. Anyway, a female gunfighter and her Japanese companion Kai, who go about the Old West having sex and fighting people. Lots of fun. Next up, a mystery romance, Cold Case Coiorado, by, who's it by? By Cassie Miles. So just a really enjoyable mix of mystery and romance. Had a lot of fun with it. Next up, another V.C. Andrews. So I didn't enjoy this one. So this is the second book in the Castile saga, Dark Angel. For whatever reason, I didn't enjoy this nearly as much as the first book or the third book, which I just talked about. So this one has the main character, Heaven, kind of at school for a lot of it, and it just didn't click with me in the same way that the other ones did, but still a lot of fun. After that, we have Women's Barracks by Tereska Torres. So her kind of true account of life as a girl soldier in the French army, stationed in Britain during the Second World War. Much less trashy than the cover makes it look, and a really quite interesting and sensitive book. After that, we have a couple of execution novels, so books 13 and 14 in the Executioner series, both by Don Pendleton. So Washington IOU, where McBonan goes to Washington and takes on all sorts of corruption, and then San Diego Siege, where he goes to, you guessed it, San Diego, and fights the mafia there. So both just very entertaining, skillfully done men's adventure. Complete nonsense, but a lot of fun. After that, we have Naked Kane the Stranger, by Penelope Ashe, on the cover, but actually by a bunch of book critics who got together to write the trashiest sex book they could. It's definitely trashy, it's definitely full of sex. I enjoyed the read of it, but the kind of whole concept and snobbery behind it, I enjoyed less. Again, I did do a full review of this near the start of Garb August. Right, next up, by Mr. Dean R. Koontz, Night Chills. So this is back in the day when Dean Koontz was a lot trashier than he is now. A enjoyable mix of sex and horror, albeit with some of the kind of sexual violence aspects of it were a bit too much for me, if I'm honest. Where are we? Next up, Triggerman. So another men's adventure book, very much in the Executioner mould, about a guy going up against the mafia. So not as good as the Executioner books, but still quite entertaining. After that, we have Airport 77 by Michael Scheff and David Spector, based on their screenplay, so their novelisation of the airplane disaster movie about a plane that gets hijacked and then crashes in the water. Very silly, but very entertaining. After that, we have a Kindle book, so The Adventurers by Harold Robbins. So a big, sprawling book full of sex and violence, about 3 guys kind of growing up from the 40s through to the kind of 60s. So there was a lot I enjoyed in there. There was a lot I enjoyed in it, but it was too long. Basically, there was just too much stuff going on in it, and I did lose track a bit at times. After that, Witch by Jane Harman, so an enjoyable, very trashy, quickly turned out pulp from New English Library, about women trying to take over the world. It was absolutely daft, but I enjoyed it quite a lot. After that, another Kindle book, Sindol by Orrie Hitt, who was a very prolific writer who turned out lots of sexy books in the 50s and 60s. So this was about a young woman who gets involved in, as it's described on the cover of the book, the dirty pictures racket. So it wasn't fantastic, but there was a lot that was quite enjoyable in there. Next up, The Judas Spy by, not by Nick Carter, so featuring Nick Carter Killmaster. So again, a kind of men's adventure, espionage type thing. Lots of sex and violence, and therefore lots of fun. And this one, I did say earlier on that sometimes books with sex and violence aren't fun, but this fortunately has a reasonably strong plot to kind of carry you through it. After that, something completely different. The Kids from Fame, Book 1 by Lisa Todd, aka Stephen Gallagher. So a fun novelisation of a few episodes of the Kids from Fame TV show, featuring a motley crew of young people learning to become singers, actors, and so on. After that, another bit of Mills and Boon, so The Celebrity Doctor's Proposal by Sarah Morgan. So a fun opposites attract kind of romance set in a small town doctor's surgery. Next up, Covert Op, Book 5, Strike Force Falklands, Book 5, Covert Op by Adam Hardy, which was a very silly but quite enjoyable kind of war novel set during the Falklands War and published just a few years after the Falklands War, but told with enough kind of skill and craftsmanship that it was pretty entertaining. Where have we got to? I've lost my place on my list. Next up, When Love Speaks by Valentine, a 60s romance with a bit of a dodgy concept. So it's about a guy who falls in love with his teenage stepdaughter, but it was sensitively enough told that it managed to get away with that dodgy concept. After that, we have The Piercing by John Coyne, a horror novel about a young girl with stigmata, and the slightly shady priest who, he's not really shady, but he's not sticking to his vows, shall we say, who gets involved in kind of investigating her case. It wasn't quite as good as I expected it to be. It certainly wasn't as off the wall bonkers as John Coyne's book. The Searing was that I read in the run up to Garb August, but it was still a fun mix of kind of devilish stuff and Catholicism and sex and violence. Next up, we have a Kindle book, The Nest, by Gregory Douglas, which I was expecting to really enjoy. So a killer cockroach book, much loved, many people really, really like it. For whatever reason, and this happens sometimes, it just didn't click with me. There's some really enjoyable kind of gore scenes in there, but as a whole, the book just didn't work for me. After that, another Kindle book, Make My Wish Come True by Katie Price, who is a British glamour model and kind of TV celebrity. So it's ghostwritten by someone whose name I didn't manage to find out, was a kind of modern romance set in Brighton, which is very near where I live, so that was quite interesting, but I just found it all a bit annoying, to be honest with you. After that, we have the infamous Go Ask Elliis, the supposedly true but actually completely made up diary of a teenager who gets addicted to drugs. After that, we are nearly at the end of the list. We have Sister Sister by Andrew Niederman, a book about conjoined twins with psychic powers, which was not as much fun as that concept makes it sound. Then we have another book, another Kindle book, Stuck on You by Jasper Bark, which is a very dodgy kind of extreme horror type book about a man who wakes up to find he is stuck to a woman who has died, and they have died in the act of lovemaking. It wasn't that great. Right, two more books to go. So another one by, a book by Guy and Smith, who I've talked about on the channel before, a very pulpy and trashy British horror writer who turned out loads of stuff in the 70s and 80s in particular. This one is about escaped killer snakes. I quite often failed to connect with Guy and Smith's books, and I completely failed to connect with this. I think his Killer Crab books are really quite fun, but this one lacked a fair bit for me. And then finally, Firefly, which I talked about at length in my wrap-up video for WTF week. So by Piers Anthony, and a book that just had A was much too long at 500 odd pages, but B just had far too much troubling content in it, and I was just completely turned off by it as a result. So I talked at the start about that balance between the unsavoury aspects of a book and the enjoyment factor of a book. And for this one, the unpleasant parts just so completely outweighed the enjoyable parts that it completely killed it for me as a read. But I did manage to finish it. So those were the 34 books I read for Garb August. That was a lot. I did I had a bit of a lull, well, not a lull exactly, but a moment towards the end of Garb August. I think it was when I was in WTF week, when I was just thinking, God, I need to read something that's not trash. But actually, I've ended, and I'll talk a bit about these books in a bit more detail in my weekly wrap-up video, but I've ended reading 3 or 4 short, trashy books on the trot, like Satan's Burnouts Must Die, Death Tour, one of the Executioner books, the Survivalist book, and I've really, really enjoyed them all. So my love of trash had definitely not been dented by Garb August. And in fact, the first book I'm reading for September is a Richard Lehman book. So that should tell you that I definitely haven't had enough of trash just yet. So apologies for the length of this video. I'm sure it has been quite long. As I've said at various points, do let me know what your experience of Garb August was in the comments. Let me know if you've enjoyed it as much as I have. I really, really hope you have. We will come back for more garbage next August, so I can now officially announce that the title for Garb August 2023 will be Garb August 2 Electric Boogaloo. So stay tuned, not that soon, but at some point in the future for more information about next year's Garb August. You may have to give it a good few months, but kind of next May time we'll probably start talking about it again. But yeah, hopefully people who have taken part this year will come back for more, and hopefully people who haven't taken part this year will have had their interest piqued and will be interested in taking part next year. But yeah, I will leave it there. As always, thanks very much for watching. Hope you're safe and well. Hope you're reading good stuff, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.